Hey everybody, it's Addy Sons, Addy, or Indigenous Unity. This is my third time trying to make this episode. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from you guys as far as the first episode I made yesterday, encouraging me to continue on with this. So I still have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just, speaking how I feel. Now, yesterday I talked about a lot of different subjects, so I feel that going forward, I could just go ahead and expand on each of those subjects as I go on with my episodes in the future. Today, I want to talk about an idea that it goes through the Instagram, online community and native circles. The idea about what is Afrocentrism and what it really means. So I guess we'll go ahead and talk about that. Now, a lot of people confuse Afrocentrism with ethnocentrism. And when you think, what is ethnocentrism? Ethnocentrism is the idea of centering everything around your ethnicity or your race and kind of imposing it on other groups of people. So the best way to show that example is to look at Eurocentrism. You have colonization, white supremacy. You have, white people becoming the standard in everything, or white people telling their story, their version of the story when it comes to how history went down. You watered down all the atrocities that European people did in order to look more favorable or to make it seem like it's something that was better for everyone else. Manifest destiny, all that crap. That's Eurocentrism, and it's very toxic, obviously. But then you have Afrocentrism, and what people don't understand is that it's not equatable. Afrocentrism is not the same thing as ethnocentric. It's not the same thing as Eurocentric. Because Afrocentrism, it came out because of it was from a need. Afrocentrism came because of ethnocentrism, because of Eurocentrism. Afrocentrism is African American people, is black people that are really, it's just decolonization. It's learning their roots, their African roots. It's learning to love and embrace themselves as black people. It's learning to embrace the traits of their body that they were told are not desirable. Their hair, their melanin, their facial features, their culture, all these things. That's what it's about. That's what Afrocentrism is about. It's about survival. It's about celebration. And I see a lot of people equating that with something that's bad and not good. So I just wanted to come here and set the record straight. Now, I don't have much of authority. I'm not a black African person. So if I say something that's out of line, please let me know. But I feel like as someone who does understand the difference, I have the responsibility to educate my fellow people who do not understand what the difference is. So this is why I'm here today. Now, the idea is that people conflate Afrocentrism with ethnocentrism and a certain brand of ethnocentrism. This brand of ethnocentrism is the idea that black African people are the original or true Native Americans. It's the belief that African black people were here before 1492, before European invasion. It is the idea that African black people created civilizations and culture in the Americas. And it's the belief that the people who believe that they're Native American people are really just fake, watered down, hybrid, $5 Indian, whatever, Mongoloid, whatever they want to call us. That's what they believe. They believe that we're rape babies, we're rape people, and we're not real, we're not true, and all of that stuff. Now, I treat this type of ethnocentrism the same way that you should treat a religious cult, because that's what their ideology boils down to. It's indoctrination. It's a lot of fake pseudoscience, fake pseudo-history, and it comes from a people who are hurt and who are told that their history and where they come from is not desirable, it's lesser than. And we have to understand that when we're dealing with these ideologies, and stop villainizing people who are lost. And it doesn't mean that we have to accept it or let it slide, but we need to understand how we go about talking to these people. Now, like I said, I compare these quote-unquote Afrocentric ideas I compare it to religious cults. For instance, you could look at religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. They all share the same God. They're vastly different when it comes to their traditions and beliefs, but they all believe in the same God. Now, to make that more specific, we can compare these ethnocentric ideas to Christianity. Christianity has different sects or sections. You have Catholicism, Catholics, you have Mormons, you have Amish people, you have, Baptists, you have Latter-day Saints, you have, Westboro Baptist Church, you have like all these different denominations. But what the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons and the Christians and the Catholics and the Baptists, they all have in common is they all believe that Jesus Christ is the Lord's Son. You know what I'm saying? They all have different beliefs and different ways of going about what they believe, but they all believe that God had the Son that was named Jesus, that was come to redeem us. So that's how we should understand these ethnocentric people who believe black people are the original natives, because you have groups like the Hoteps who believe that Egyptians came to America and created civilization here. You have people who believe that the Moors came to America and were the original natives here. You have the black Hebrew Israelites who believe they're the lost tribes of Israel, and they're the original natives. You have the African Americans in African crowd who they believe that the slave trade never happened and that they just been here. You have the people who believe that the African people are really the Olmec people of Mexico, the Olmec civilization. You have the people who believe that they're the Aboriginals, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but my point is you can't just paint them all with one picture, because they have slightly different beliefs in how they're the original native people, but they all believe that African black people are the original native people. So I believe that if you want to understand what the issue is, you really need to understand what they believe. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but it means that if you want to understand how to take down an ideology or to explain it to somebody who believes it, then you should take the time to also try to understand it yourself. It's kind of like the idea that a lot of atheists know more about the Bible than some Christians. And so for them to try to convert Christians, they use the Bible against them. You know what I'm saying? I know I keep going back to religion, but the way these groups act is really like religion, because going back again to white supremacy, it's pretty much messed us all up and are trying to find our identities. So it's not something that you think you could just undo. You can't change someone's opinion overnight, but you also can't antagonize people, because it's not going to end well. And I'm not saying, we all have to get along and all that, but what I am saying is that you need to not meet people where they're at, but understand where people are at to understand what is going to be effective. Because I see a lot of people spending all this time and energy trying to tag me or send me messages and say, hey, you need to say something. But in reality, I've done this so much. I've had these conversations so much, and It's tiring. And I see a lot of pages throughout the years of decolonizing mestizo people or just native accounts in general who dedicate their whole account to debunking these ideas of who the original natives were. And while I believe that's important work, I also believe that a lot of these people do it in such a racist way that is not productive at all. For instance, these groups of people, they use their propaganda, a lot like the Mexica movement does. They use a lot of visual memes and try to use comparisons. Like they'll show a picture of Lil Wayne with a Maya pottery a face figure and say, oh, look, they look similar. That means that we're the originals. Or they'll take a picture of the Olmec stone face and they'll take a picture side by side with an African American person and they'll say, look, we're the original Olmec people because we have fat lips and fat noses just like this stone. And that's not at all how people should be using, doing their history, doing their anthropology. That's no indication whatsoever. But then I'll see these accounts that try to debunk those ideas, and they'll do it in a racist way where they compare black people with monkeys, or they mock black people and black ideology. If you want to spot someone who's anti-black, just see if they use the phrase "we was Kangs," and that was like we and then WUZ KANGZ, and ultimately it's mocking black people. It's borderline minstrel. It's putting black vernacular in a way that belittles them and puts them below us, because a lot of Afrocentric ideology is going back to the excellence of black people and African people. The idea that African people, that they were kings and queens or royalty or something great before that they were ripped away from their people. A lot of that also ties to Hoteps, but there's no way to go about it to make fun of black people for them trying to reach back for their roots. You know what I'm saying? That would be like if a black person saw a decolonization page and was like, look at those stupid wetbacks. They think they was warriors and shit. It's the same thing. So for people to not realize that, to me, is mind-boggling. For people to not realize that true Afrocentrism is decolonization for African American people. The same way we like to preach about decolonization and reaching back for our native roots and to identify as native people and be proud and all this kind of stuff. And we had civilizations, we had pyramids, and we want to embrace that. But then we're going to turn around and mock black people for doing the same thing for themselves? Who the fuck are we to do that to other people? Why are we falling into the trap of belittling black people? You know what I'm saying? We're perpetuating the white supremacy that has kept our people and has kept black people down at the bottom for so long. I really don't understand it. They want to say that Afrocentrism is the same thing as ethnocentric. But I'm like, you know what? Then who's to say that all of us here on Instagram promoting ideas about decolonization, who's to say that we're not indigenous centric, we're not native centric? You know what I'm saying? It's, to me, I don't understand why people are so easy to make these comparisons and act like they're valid. It's the same thing when people try to say, when you call white people crackers, the same as the N-word. No, it's not. And you know damn well why. So why are you going to say Afrocentrism is the same thing as Eurocentrism? Do you feel me? I hope you understand what I'm saying right now, because that's ultimately what you're doing when you're mocking Afrocentrism, when you're saying that it's a bad thing. It's not. What you're really thinking about is ethnocentrism in this form. And that's all that you really need to be focusing on. You need to stop focusing your time on attacking black people or black ideologies. You need to spend your time attacking ethnocentrism and those ideologies. So stop making those racist memes and start putting your work into dismantling them with facts. It's fucking ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Like, the propaganda that they post as their facts, yeah, it's cult-like ideology. So you providing facts against it is not going to change their mind most of the time. But at the same time, at least you're putting out there ideas that counter theirs. So for the next person who's thinking about what it really means, you could probably change their mind, or you can show them two different sides so that they can make up their mind for themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, they want to say the slave trade never happened. Then how about you talk to them and send them to a link where it shows that there's slave ships that have sunken on the eastern side of the United States. Show them that there are remains of the slave ships that are in the Smithsonian Museum. They want to say that the African people were here before 1492, before Europeans. Then why don't you show them the Kennewick Man? The Kennewick Man is an indigenous skeleton that was found here in Kennewick, Washington State. And they DNA tested it, and it goes back to 11,000 years ago. And the DNA matches with indigenous American people today, not African people. That is irrefutable proof that people here 10,000 years ago were Native Americans, and they were not Africans. Tell them the fact that there is no African remains on this continent that predate 1492. A lot of the times they want to use pictures of Afro-Native people who are African and indigenous mix, or people who are African and they escaped slavery and they found solace and refuge in indigenous tribes, and so they were adopted into these tribes, and they're wearing indigenous regalia, and someone takes a picture of that in the 1800s, and all of a sudden people think that's proof that black people were the original natives, even though cameras did not exist before 1492. So you cannot make that actual fact. And it also brings up the point that these ideologies are very harmful to our relatives who are mixed, who are biracial, someone who is indigenous and African, legitimately. Someone like my family, half Mexican, half African. I know Mexican isn't a race, mestizo, half African American. They have those bloodlines inside them. They are both. But you know what? The way that a lot of our people go about debunking this stuff is super racist. And where does that leave them? Where does that leave people who are really Afro-Native? They don't. How does that make them feel invited in our communities? You know what I'm saying? How does that make them feel like they are welcome into the spaces of us trying to decolonize? I always say, you can't say you're here for your people unless you're here for all of your people. And that includes your African Native people. That includes Native people who are mixed with other races. That includes Native women. That includes disabled Native people. That includes LGBTQ Native people. You can't say you're here for Native people if you're not fighting for your indigenous African Native people. These ideas silence and erase them. And, you spend all your time trying to debunk the ideas that we're the true natives. And while that is true, it also puts them in a spot to where they feel like they're invalidated. Because whenever they look black, but they are also native, and they try to claim their native identity, then you have people of our community who invalidate them because of these groups of ethnocentric people who are pretending to be native when they're not. I don't see anyone standing up for those people. So all these people who want to say that I'm rolling over for Afrocentrics, it's like they don't understand. It's like the white person who wants to speak about, well, this isn't racist. I'm allowed to do or say this. but they don't have no black friends. They don't understand black people or black history. And I'm not saying I understand what it means to be black. But what I'm saying is that what I do understand puts me in a position to where I'm going to speak up when I see people be ignorant about this. And if you're not going to do it, then you should shut up when other people are doing it. I know I'm getting kind of like riled up here, but this is serious stuff, because all of us mestizos, light-skinned and white-passing native people want to cry about our validation and our identity so much every day, but then we're not going to say shit about our Afro-native people, the people who look just African, or they look mixed, but you can't tell that they're native. What about them? And then people wonder why our groups is so divided, or, you know what I'm saying? They feel like that we're anti-black and we don't say shit. Well, guess what? Because we don't say shit. So how about getting out there and opening up a book, talking to people who are not just like you, to get a greater understanding. Sorry, I need to catch my breath. So like I was saying, this is the third time I'm recording this, because each time I finish, I feel like I missed a lot of things I should have said. And I know I'm going to end this recording feeling the same way. But I have to keep trying, I guess. What I really want people to come out of this conversation that I'm having with myself is that I want you to understand the difference between Afrocentrism and ethnocentrism. And the next time you see an African American person who antagonizes you on Instagram, don't call them an Afrocentric. You know, they are ethnocentric, they're wrong, and they could be toxic and hateful, but that does not represent all black people. It doesn't even represent a good amount of black people. It's a small amount of black people that are doing this. And for us, it feels like it's a bigger amount of group, because these people want our identity, and so they seek us out to invalidate us. But if we get emotional about it, it is our problem, because that is us feeling invalidated. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, if you know who you are, then you should not be so offended when someone tells you are not. And that could be easier said than done, because it happens to me all the time. And not just from these ethnocentric people, but from my own people. Like, when people who are also mixed mestizo or indigenous tell me I'm not native, or, you know, people call me white, or they call me Asian, whatever. It's easy to say it doesn't bother you, but what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Like, honestly, what? You're going to sit there and retaliate, and you're going to feel better for a little bit, but the next time it happens, you're going to do the same shit? How about you spend more time to understand yourself and your identity even better? That way, the next time it happens to you, you're going to feel more fortified, and it's not going to hurt you as much. And you could stick to the facts instead of sticking to your emotions. Because I promise you, if you do that, that's going to leave the other person thinking more. Now, I don't have an easy answer for all of this stuff on how to deal with it or how to go about it. But what I do think is that we need to have a better understanding of everything else around us. We need to stop being so centric ourselves. If you're not here for all your people, you can't say you're here for your people. Period. You can't. So if all you do is spend time debunking ethnocentrism, but you don't spend time defending your Afro-Indigenous relatives, it's going to look a certain type of way. And I've encountered plenty of accounts who do that. Plenty of accounts who start out promising, but then over time they get more cocky, they get more comfortable, and next thing you know, a racist meme comes out. And then I'm the one that calls them out and spends the next 2 days putting them on blast, arguing with them, because I don't think what they're doing is right. Now, I think I pretty much said all I need to say when it comes to the ethnocentrism and what is really Afrocentrism. And I would end this episode now, but on a related note, I want to talk a little bit about anti-blackness in the indigenous community, in the decolonized community, in the quote-unquote Latinx community. Because right now, as I'm recording this on my iPhone, my notifications are blowing up because of a post I made talking about, if you're not black, don't use the N-word. And I've got this Chicano dude who is writing paragraphs about how he should be allowed to say it because it's just a word and he grew up in the hood and his homies use it, blah, blah, blah. I think that's bullshit. I think you know that it's wrong and you just want to give an excuse as to why you think you should be able to say it. But you wouldn't let a white person call you a spick or a beaner or a wetback. No matter what, there's going to be people who will try to co-sign it. You could have Mario Lopez for Trump. Does that mean that you think it's okay that our people are for Trump? You're always going to find people to co-sign it, but that don't mean shit because you know the truth. You know what is really appropriate or not. And ultimately, if you're acting like a white person, then you're just promoting white supremacy. So enough of this anti-blackness. It takes $0 to act like a good human being. If it's really that ingrained in your vocabulary, how about you open up a thesaurus? There's really no excuse. There's not. There's so much more I want to say, but I'll be getting off topic, and I don't know. I guess I'll just have to wait for next episode, where I want to talk about homophobia, transphobia, femphobia. I want to talk about toxic masculinity, machismo. Ugh, I have to go to bed. I need to hurry up and upload this shit. But for real though, like, I think our community needs to do better because we are catering to a certain demographic of people, and that's what it is. When we're comfortable with our relatives using the N-word, when we're comfortable with our relatives sharing a racist anti-black meme, when we're comfortable looking the other way when someone talks bad about someone being darker skinned, when we're comfortable with all that shit, we're distancing ourselves from our relatives and from other communities who should have our backs and we should have their backs. But we can't expect that when we don't even give that respect back. You know what? No one else owes us respect because we owe everyone else the respect first. And you might think that's one-sided, but it's not. Because what you're saying is that you don't feel like you should be giving other people respect. You feel like it's conditional. There should be no motherfucking conditions on being a decent person and giving other marginalized groups the respect they deserve. Because when it's the other way around, you automatically expect that. So how dare you think that you're better than other groups by not giving that first? You know what I'm saying? And that goes back to what I was talking about yesterday. All of us want to claim indigenous, but we don't want to give respect to indigenous communities. What's up with that? I don't know, man. All I know is that I'm trying to do better, and I hope I can inspire someone else to do the same thing on my way. Anyways, talk to y'all. Talk to y'all later. Peace.